Oh, back when we were doing Halloran, sometimes I have these notes, and sometimes I miss bits in the notes, so I have to throw little bits randomly in here. Back when when I was talking about Halloran, I forgot to mention the other crucial thing about Halloran is without Halloran, Jack doesn't kill anybody. So you kind of need somebody because if the plan of the director is to let Wendy and Danny escape, there's going to be no bloodshed. So part of Halloran's job is to just get killed. So somebody gets killed in this movie because it's a horror movie. Um, okay, cool. So I want to. This guy named Todd Alcott, who's a screenwriter, and he wrote a book analyzing some Stanley Kubrick films. He said what is possibly my favorite sentence or my favorite take on The Shining. It's a really smart thing. He said that both The Shining and 2001: A Space Odyssey, both directed by the same guy, Stanley Kubrick, both of those things, both of those movies they're very eerie, strange, odd movies. So why? I realize this is going to contradict what I said in the last video about what to focus on, but we're just trying different techniques to see what we can see. Um, this isn't church. I'm not teaching you the rules. We're just trying stuff out. He said something really smart. He said 2001 and The Shining have the same thing in common that makes them deeply weird movies, and I'm going to say it, and you can think about it for a second. He says what really makes them similar is that they are both movies in which the main character is never shown. I had to think about that for a little bit. It's interesting. It's really interesting. What do they have in common? One way of thinking what The Shining and 2001 are about is that 2001 is the story of a bunch of space aliens who are trying to evolve humankind. And the question is, can humankind evolve enough without killing each other first? Can we reach the next stage of evolution without blowing ourselves up? Because we seem to enjoy violence a lot. Is it possible to evolve? Like Hal evolves and he immediately wants to kill everybody. The monkeys evolve and they get the thing. So 2000, and he says The Shining is the same way. If 2001 is really the story of a bunch of aliens who want to evolve human beings, but it's unclear if human beings can get there without murdering each other first, The Shining is the story of a hotel that wants a guy to murder his whole family, and the whole movie is trying to get him to do it. It's a different perspective on the movie, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's really worth thinking about, especially when you think about that line where he says, "I love the little son of a bitch," and he seems genuinely upset that Danny's been hurt. He loves the kid, and that's what's holding him back. The hotel is sort of upset about it. Okay, cool. Um, okay, good. I'm doing a really good job on this. All right, cool. Let's get to bigger, bolder stuff. Let's start talking about some. Oh, there's a great little music cue when Danny says, "You would never hurt us, would you, Daddy?" And the music goes, and it kind of holds up here, and then it bum, 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 bum. The music, by the way, it's hard to talk about music out loud and just describe it, but it's this very screechy, atonal. It's a fascinating score. A lot of it's done by this guy named Penderecki. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Who also did some music for a David Lynch thing that I like. But he's a really kind of experimental weirdo composer, and there's a lot of really interesting pieces. It's a very unusual score that makes it neat. I don't have a whole lot to say more than that, except that he's crazy and the music seems crazy, and that's all I want to say there. There's other movies where we will talk about music more, but this isn't one of them, and neither is Rear Window. Okay, cool. So let's do some other big things. I'm good. I'm really making my way through this. Oh, and there's a cool camera shot where you see Jack and then it pulls out and you realize it's a mirror. Same thing with the red rum thing. You don't know what red rum is, and then when you see it in the mirror, it's cool. It's just I don't have anything to say about that stuff. It's fucking cool. And Jack is super angry at Wendy for not taking his writing very seriously with a typewriter. He doesn't want to be interrupted. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's get to the big stuff then. Let's talk about theme. So I think we're on the home stretch now, guys. We did it. In the interview that he has at the beginning of the movie, Stewart tells him that as the hotel caretaker, his job is to not let the elements gain a foothold. And what he means is he doesn't want snow getting everywhere. He doesn't want the pipes to freeze in the cold. He's got to take care of it to keep nature outside the hotel. But the elements do gain a foothold, but the elements are the creepy ghosts and this disturbing landscape, and it takes hold not in the hotel but in Jack's mind. And this is really this brings up bigger sort of theme issues about what's going on in the movie, which at least one thing it's about is these sort of larger forces that are destroying things, and that Jack has to kind of keep at bay, and he's unable to keep it at bay, and they take a foothold in his mind. Good. Okay, I think I'm doing pretty good here. I think I'm done with the first page. All right. Wendy also mentions breadcrumbs. You have to leave breadcrumbs to find my way around this place. And Jack does a little, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin, which is a very kind of fairy tale thing. He also gets a limp because when Wendy hits him with a baseball bat, he hurts his ankle. And then he enters into a maze, and he's like lumbering like through the maze like this. It's worth pointing. This is maybe overdoing it a little, but I'm going to say it anyway. The maze is famous from ancient Greek mythology for being where the Minotaur is kept, and the Minotaur is sort of this creature made of sort of perverted. It's a sort of a queen sort of wanted to have sex with sort of the biggest dick she could find, and so she put herself into a sort of bull costume, and this a bull or a cow costume, and a bull had sex with her, and the Minotaur is supposed to be the monster that came from her unbridled lust and whatever. And it's such a terrible thing that they put it inside a maze. It's interesting because Jack kind of becomes that monster. He is the monster in the maze, and there's a number of fairy tale sort of references that sort of place this in like a fairy tale world. And it's not really a fairy tale, but he is he looks like a monster. He's this lumbering kind of trapped in a maze like the Minotaur. He can't get out. And there's a whole like fucked up sexual undercurrent in The Shining, which we will obviously talk about more. Now that we're on theme, we are here. So cool. The movie is also very much about repression. It's interesting that the real symbol of him losing his mind is when Wendy goes in and sees all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. And he's been writing that over and over and over and over and over and over again. And again, with a typewriter, Jesus Christ, that took him forever, right? By the way, it's a story, this is a true thing, but Stanley Kubrick, when the movie was released in Germany and Italy and whatever, he had his secretary did all that typing of that whole stack of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. He made her do that in like 4 or 5 different languages so that when they were released overseas, they could use the foreign language translation, which is just so much work for that poor woman. Okay, so all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's a famous sort of moment of craziness in the film. What does it mean? It means that if you work too much and you don't ever have any fun, it's bad for you. Now, of course, in the movie, it's suggested that, his fun is murdering his family. But it's worth pointing out that when he's working on his novel, all work, he's supposed to be working, when he's working on his novel, his family is playing in the maze. And he doesn't go with them because he's working and he doesn't play. Because he works all the time and doesn't play, he doesn't know the maze. But Danny does because he played. And that's why Danny's able to get out and Jack's trapped in there. Because he worked and worked and worked, but he never enjoyed himself. He was never able to. So it built up underneath, and then right, he's so stressed about his job and his blah blah blah. Right? What did he hurt Danny over? His papers. It was his work. So there's something in here about men who work too much and work too hard and don't know how to have fun. They're repressing all of this stuff because they feel like they have to work all the time. So it's a crucial thing. Yeah, the maze. Okay, cool. Good. I'm doing good. Cool. Oh boy, I only have like a minute left. All right, I'm going to pick up the next thing. There's a line in when he is with the bartender and he's drinking and he says, "White man's burden." That is a phrase that is deeply racist. And has to, the white man's burden is a phrase that describes how, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, people like 100 years ago, 150 years ago, the white man's burden was supposed to describe how there are so many non-white civilizations that are full of savages, was how they put it. And that the white man's burden is a racist phrase that was meant to be like, it's our job as British people to go in there and civilize them, to control them, to teach them laws. And this is really just an excuse to go in there and steal a bunch of gold and act like assholes and ruin civilization. So it's a racist phrase, but he says it, and we're going to talk about why in the next video.